We still have a way to go, but the early indications are that the big hitters of 2026 are going to end up in the slot pile when we look back. Mario Galaxy, The Mummy, The Mandalorian, Michael, Scream 7, even Non-Disclosure Day this weekend. Of course, we've had those rare anomalies, Backrooms and Obsession recently. They caught everybody off guard.
Nikki?
But with the multiplex now getting ready for a Supergirl, Woody and Buzz's next hurrah, The Rock playing The Rock in Hawaii, sometimes you just have to look across the border and broaden your horizons. Back in January, I sat down, CF18 at my local IMAX, completely numb after having watched Chris Pratt anchor the most dangerous and precedent-setting vacuum of a movie ever manufactured. Drained and looking for signs of life, I stayed in that seat, looked past the studio borders, and was instantly resurrected by the next film that came on, the pure, uncompromising gravity of South Korea and Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice. If you haven't seen it, go watch it and let that be your gateway drug into a masterclass filmography. In fact, the standout cinema of 2026 hasn't been from that Pacific coast. The best Hollywood had to offer so far was Project Hail Mary's speedrun. When I saw that, it was a few days after having had my gut punched by Wagner Moura. That's right, we went to Brazil for the clinical tension of The Secret Agent. We've dissected a deep-fried Scottish madness of California scheming. Japan gave us the tight claustrophobic anxiety of Exit 8. And just last week, England handed us a beautifully tragic, muck-covered surprise in Savage House. If you spend your entire life exclusively watching movies about people who look like you, sound like you, and live in places you recognise, your movie diet is going to get dangerously stale. To put it bluntly, a great story transcends borders and language. People should embrace subtitles and hear the actual performances and the raw emotional weight that artists committed to tape. I'm going to coin a new series. Let's call it the World Cup of Movies, given the current climate. Let's kick things off with a trip to Denmark this week. Just completely ignore the minor detail they didn't actually qualify for a real World Cup this year. Let's talk about The Last Viking. If you've seen Anders Thomas Jensen's previous work, like Riders of Justice, you know his kind of magic trick. He builds these chaotic, absurd ensembles, but every single character, no matter how bizarre or violent the situation gets, actually feels like a flesh and blood person, and they have an earned arc. On paper, the premise of Last Viking seems like a straightforward hangover from a heist, and the main character, Anker, he gets out of prison after 15 years, grabs his brother and goes digging for the hidden loot. But the deeper they dig into the Danish dirt, the more you realise they're unearthing something far darker, deeply buried things. This one is a true onion movie. You peel it back layer by layer. You start out laughing at the absurdity, but step by step you start to embrace the characters. You feel for them. Every single person in this ensemble has a meticulously crafted emotional arc, except for the drummer in the band who learns absolutely nothing, which in itself feels like a hilarious in-joke. And in those layers, the biggest one you have to pull back is Anker's brother, Manfred, anchored and played superbly by Mads Mikkelsen. Anker, the protagonist, just did 15 years in a jail cell and he wants his money, but the only map to the loot is currently locked inside the head of his brother, who has developed Dissociative Identity Disorder, or D.I.D. He currently resides in 1969 and is entirely convinced he is John Lennon. How exactly do you interrogate a man about a bag of stolen cash buried somewhere in the woods when he's worried about Yoko Ono breaking up the band? On paper, it's an absurd pitch-black comedic setup, and it's very funny. But when we dissect this and we look at how the film actually handles that specific condition, D.I.D, the Dissociative Identity Disorder, we can also look at how Hollywood looks at that. And they don't see a profound, devastating condition. They don't see a human tragedy. They see a monster movie. They look at D.I.D and think, let's turn this into a pantomime parlour trick. M. Night Shyamalan gave us Split, anchored admittedly by a solid performance from James McAvoy, but they camped it up to 11. It treats a fractured psyche like a comic book superpower where the final evolution is a literal supervillain crawling on the walls. Comparing M. Night Shyamalan's approach to mental illness to Anders Thomas Jensen's, like comparing a Costco hot dog to a plate of stegflæsk med persillesovs. Yes, the Costco hot dog is cheap, it fills a hole. We all secretly know exactly what it tastes like, but it's processed, it's algorithmic. Jensen, on the other hand, he's serving up an authentic, layered, culturally rich dish that actually requires your attention. Hollywood uses D.I.D for cheap jump scares. Jensen uses to explore the devastating isolation of a fractured mind. Take the first act of the movie. You're going to see a few attempts where Mads Mikkelsen's character tries to commit suicide, but played in a way for genuine, pitch-black laughs. But Jensen's playing a long game. The dark humour comes completely full circle. What initially looks like a comedic bit built on a surface level inflexibility of the character, it becomes the deepest, most tragic and profound part of the entire film. Jensen and Mikkelsen never let you forget the horrifying reality of the illness. Manfred isn't a villain, he's a tragedy, and more importantly, the film explores the collateral damage this illness inflicts on the people left holding the pieces, namely Anka. There's a line buried in the middle of this film that completely anchors the entire story. Everyone's entitled to their own unique reality. And that goes all the way through. Nicholas Bro as Fleming, the antagonist of the piece, he's the other part of the heist coming after his share of the money. He's a bizarre creation. He's equal parts evil sadist with moments of shocking brutality, which are made all the more chilling by his somewhat friendly demeanour. There's a sequence where he's torturing a character and in between fixing the wood panelling of their house because it's peeling off. Underneath the bank heist and the pitch black comedy of a Danish man wandering around the countryside convinced he wrote "I am the walrus," that line is the soul of the movie. Everyone's entitled to their own unique reality. It's a level of grace you simply do not get in a factory line studio filmmaking. Jensen isn't laughing at Manfred's fractured mind, he's demanding that we respect it. And that is the real strength of The Last Viking and so many of the international films carrying the medium right now. If I point out this isn't a Hollywood production, I'm not trying to say it like an anti-corporation, anti-CGI, anti-streaming battle cry. I just mean that the cinematic DNA is fundamentally different. It operates on a wavelength that even American independent cinema doesn't really touch. You take the drama this year with Robert Pattinson and Zendaya, and it felt so refreshing earlier in the year. And that's because under the polished A24 American indie gloss, it was steered by a troubled Norwegian director. The style, the visual flourishes, the quiet, uncomfortable moments all feel completely different, but they work flawlessly because at their core, they're fiercely human stories. We have that in common, and a great movie never forgets that. We are all human and we are all completely flawed. In a cinematic landscape built on division and algorithms, if you really want to look in a mirror, if you only want to watch movies about people who look exactly like you, walk around places you recognise and eat food you recognise, go right ahead. Greggs has a 3 sausage rolls for £5 deal on at the moment. Enjoy your comfort zone. But if you actually look outward, if you cast the net across the border and see what comes back, you might find an entire world waiting for you. If you go to watch The Last Viking and enjoy it, go discover Riders of Justice, push deeper into Danish cinema, discover The Hunt and Another Round. All of those were in my top 10 of their respective years. And then come back here on Tuesday, because we're going to take another look at how Scandinavia is coming to conquer a Hollywood icon and why a very angry Finnish gold miner is about to make John Rambo look like a substitute teacher. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the football.
Would you like to know more?
Movies, popcorn.